Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, January 29th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, writer at the New Republic, co-host of the Politics of Everything, Alex Pareene, will join us. Also on this Casual Friday, as I wear my soft-collared shirt, Francesca Fiorentini, host of the Bituation Room, will be joining us a little bit later. Meanwhile, Democrats about to give up the ghost and head forward via reconciliation, as the Republicans refuse to provide COVID relief to the American public. Johnson & Johnson will be seeking emergency FDA approval for a vaccine found to be 72% effective in the U.S., 85% effective after day 28, and 100% effective after day 49. Also effective against death after day 28. Meanwhile, Robinhood hit with a class action as Democrats tee up congressional hearings on it shutting down part of the trading of GameStop and other stocks. The post-Trump era for Republicans ends as they revisit the new Trump era. And nevertheless, pressure mounts as Marjorie Taylor Greene revealed to have blamed California wildfires on a Jewish-financed space laser. New York State Attorney General Tish James reports that the Cuomo administration undercounted COVID nursing home deaths by nearly 50%. And in D.C., the Capitol Police want to put Washington, D.C. on a form of permanent lockdown. General Motors announces they will go fully electric within 14 years, their entire fleet of cars. South Carolina passes a bill to outlaw abortions. And lastly, Austin, Texas reallocates $150 million from the police force to buy hotels for housing people. Imagine that. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is Casual Friday. Joining me, very casual manner, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma. How are you?
Cool and casual, slick, awesome. You know, just not caring about anything.
I just noticed you don't really have like a casual Friday look per se. You sort of maintain the same. I mean,
I kind of do. I mean, what am I going to do? Wear like a T-shirt with a logo on it?
I mean, there have been folks who have done that in the past.
Maybe I will. I mean, but we keep the windows open here, so I go with sweater.
That's right.
When we're both in studio.
That's right.
Pretty much every time.
Much more casual in the summer. I, of course, am wearing a soft-collared shirt. I think everybody probably is aware of that by this point. It is Casual Friday. We should just say that Austin is really exciting. The Austin City Council voted to purchase, this is just one example, the Texas Bungalows Hotel and Suites for $6.7 million on Tuesday night. one of several intended for emergency housing. This is from The Hill. And it is coming, the money is coming from more than $150 million in funds that it was reallocated from the Austin Police Department late last summer in the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests. And astonishingly, the police department's budget is still $290 million. But the theory here is that if you provide housing for people, you are taking a part of the portfolio from the police department off their hands. They no longer have to deal with problems that emanate from people being unhoused. And particularly in the context of COVID, you're going to want to provide housing for people who might need to be quarantined. But this is a good development, and hopefully we'll see more of this around the country. And
it fits into your unburdening of the police.
Well, I mean, that's
narrative.
been. I think that was the push all along for the most part. I mean, there was certainly. I think defund the police means different things to different people. Some people literally want to abolish police departments, but I have a feeling that the vast majority of people want there to be less policing, less and more direct addressing of the underlying problems that society has, that police are asked in a second, third, fourth order way to address. And so this is, they're going to improve their community, Austin.
Yeah, it's nice to not have to have the philosophical discussion anymore, right? You can actually point to an example of defund in action in Austin. So we can actually move on a little bit from, I think, the spinning the wheels on this philosophical stuff that we've been doing. Austin is defunding the police, and that's what it looks like.
And in a year or two, we will get a sense of its efficacy. I mean, I imagine we're going to see the impact on people living in poverty, and obviously folks who are unhoused. We're going to see that almost immediately. But I think we'll also see, I suspect, that we will not see, whatever your fear or anyone's fear would be by cutting the police department's budget by, nearly a third. We will see if those come, if the fear mongers about this are correct, we should theoretically see a massive spike in criminal activity in Austin, Texas. And I think in the absence of that, people can start to understand that the money is just simply better spent in other areas. And you will probably get, to the extent that there are police functions that people, I think, need, which is, there are communities that are that deserve the same level of protection as other communities. Not necessarily like the policing part of it, but the serve and protect part of it. And I suspect the police will find that they can do their jobs better. I mean, but we will see. We will see. In the meantime, yesterday we opened the show with a clip from Nancy Pelosi, outraged that new freshman congresswoman, I guess you would say, Marjorie Taylor Greene, from I think it's the 14th congressional district in Georgia. She was probably the most celebrated, as it were, QAnon believer elected to Congress in this last go-round.
Yes, there were more than one.
There were more than one. But she was the most prominent.
But Ronna McDaniel, the head of the RNC, says that QAnon is just fringe, completely out there, and yet at least two members of Congress who believe it.
Yes. I mean, and gosh knows how many people fed into this. I mean, let's face it, the QAnon fiction, if you will, conspiracy theories, drove much of the notion that the election was stolen. And we know from polling that up to 75% of Republicans believe in one form or another that Donald Trump won the election, or at least had as of a couple of weeks ago, certainly well after the election. And so I don't know. What's fringe in the what was marginal? What was marginal in the Republican Party 15 years ago, I think is probably arguably its leadership now. But and so we'll see where what percentage of Republicans are QAnon-like in the House, just I would imagine in 2 or 3 cycles. However, Marjorie Taylor Greene was I don't know how to really articulate this, a Parkland and Newtown shooting denier.
False flag.
Yes, claiming that that these things were never happened or were manufactured or something to that effect. And she was appointed by Republican leadership to the Education Committee.
Which is what outraged Nancy Pelosi.
Indeed. And I mean, it's one thing if you want to pretend like, oh, we have no control over what our voters do. They just sort of organically came to this own notion, which is not like we stoked these fires. And they elected Marjorie Taylor Greene, and democracy calls for this. But I mean, if you're the leader of a party and you appoint someone who denied mass shootings in an elementary and in a high school to the Education Committee, I mean, gosh.
And the premise was that they were set up in order for the Democrats to take your guns away. This is a part of the trickle-down effect of Alex Jones and all of what he perpetuated and stoked.
Well, it turns out, and it makes sense, that it wasn't just the Parkland or the Newtown that she was skeptical of actually happening. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene all of 3 years ago in her car shooting a video suggesting that the Vegas shooting was also some form of false flag operation, of course, for the same ends.
Friends, I've got a question for you. How do you get avid gun owners and people that support the Second Amendment to give up their guns and go along with anti-gun legislation? How do you do that? Maybe you accomplish that by performing a mass shooting into a crowd that is very likely to be conservative, very likely to vote Republican, very likely to be Trump supporters, very likely to be pro-Second Amendment, and very likely to own guns. You make them scared, you make them victims, and you change their mindset, and then possibly you can pass anti-gun legislation. Is that what happened in Las Vegas? Is that why the country music festival was targeted? Because those would be the people, would be the ones that we would relate to? Are they trying to terrorize our mindset and change our minds on the Second Amendment? Is that what's going on here? I have a lot of questions about that. I don't believe Stephen Paddock was a lone wolf. I don't believe that he pulled this off all by himself. And I know most of you don't either. So I am really wondering if there's a bigger motive there, and does it have to do with the Second Amendment? Because what's the best way to control the people? You have to take away their guns. So that's just my question today. This is Marjorie Greene with American Truth Seekers.
Glad she signed off with her name there, so we could be absolutely clear.
Yes, I think we've identified who that woman is.
Yeah. By the way, were the children, the 7-year-olds, not at Parkland, but at Newtown, were they Trump supporters too? Was that the whole reason behind that false flag operation, where none of those children were actually murdered?
I guess you got to mix it up a little bit. You got to mix it up according to her. But she's just asking questions. Just asking questions. Here she is in 2019, a little bit more, not so much inquisitive, just a little bit more definitive in her perception of what's going on. And now, we hear these things. Oh, Congress people are overblown. They're trying to pretend like they're victims because they're supposedly worried about people in Congress. I'd be a little bit concerned about this, too, if I was working alongside this woman in the same locale. Here she is from February 2019 in Washington, D.C., This is a Facebook video. Incidentally, she's been oddly getting rid of all of her social media posts. That's odd.
Shocking.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Clip number 9.
She's a traitor to our country. She's guilty of treason. That's right. She took it.
I'm sorry. She is referring to Nancy Pelosi here as she's at a rally. And so, I mean, just think about this wording and if you'd be psyched to be working alongside a person who said this, who also, has a long history. This isn't just empty rhetoric. There's a lot of insanity to back this up as far as I'm concerned. But all right, start from the beginning.
She's a traitor to our country. She's guilty of treason. That's right. She took an oath to protect American citizens and uphold our laws. And she gives aid and comfort to our enemies who illegally invade our land. That's what treason is. Exactly. And by our law, representatives and senators can be kicked out and no longer serve in our government. And it's a crime punishable by death, is what treason is. Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason, and we want her out of our government. She's held her seat of power for 32 years. She's 78 years old. She is dying in Congress. We are fed up with these corrupt politicians that hang on to their power just to make themselves rich.
I mean, look, she says the punishment for treason is execution, and Nancy Pelosi is guilty of treason. And I mean, I frankly, with all due respect, Emma, if I saw a video of you saying this about me 2 years ago, that I was guilty of something that you thought was worthy of execution, I'd be a little uncomfortable about working in the same office as you.
I think that's unfair. No, but I mean, this woman is beyond out there, obviously, and she is the direct result of all of this online misinformation that culminated in the insurrection, that culminated in people voting for someone like this. That makes sense to them based on the Facebook videos they've seen, based on the misinformation they've heard on Alex Jones channels and other ones that are still on platforms like YouTube and things like that. So, I mean, it just got a little bit more real when voters actually responded to this kind of misinformation, this dangerous conspiracy rhetoric, and then elected someone who represented their views, how they felt about things. Like, there's no denying it. She is somebody who pretends like these hundreds of people who were slaughtered in mass shootings, like it didn't happen. I mean, she's not. It's the same thing, like you say, when like how Rush Limbaugh trained his audience to if Trump, gives a wink and a nod to white supremacists, but he'll still condemn it. Oh, he has to come out and say that, right? He has to. It's the same thing with her. But, like, she's still saying these things publicly. Imagine how she feels privately. I bet privately she's assured that they were false flags.
And the issue ultimately is not that there are individuals out there who hold nutso beliefs. The issue ultimately is that you have an entire party apparatus that refused at every juncture to not just shut down her candidacy. And obviously, I think it would be undemocratic for them to come in and use extra democratic means, but to simply come out and say, this is nuts. They have cultivated a constituency, and I'm talking about the entire Republican Party, that embraces this type of belief system. Maybe it's not directly that they create these false flags things to take our guns, but they hammer home for so many years that the Democrats, that Barack Obama were out to take their guns by any means necessary. Well, this just follows, and they never step in. They haven't. They exploit this. Kevin McCarthy right now is down in Mar-a-Lago, kissing the ring of the former president, soon to be, or certainly twice impeached president, as a way of saying, like, we are yours. tell us what to do. And
also asking him for his help in the 2022 race to take back the Senate. To take back the House, excuse me. And we didn't even get to these other videos of her. I mean, we talked about the other day of her following David Hogg, one of the survivors of the Parkland shooting, for 2 minutes and harassing him on the street. I mean, there are of her belief that her anti-Semitic belief that a space cannon started the California wildfires.
Well, to be fair, that was a space laser.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got my facts
financed
wrong.
by the Rothschilds.
Yeah, it's kind of the same anti-Semitism that you were hearing about the globalists from Alex Jones. She is the Alex Jones congresswoman, and this is legitimized in the Republican Party.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Alex Pareene from the New Republic about everything that's going on, not only with the impeachment, but also with the COVID relief, and how those two are in many ways intertwined. We'll be right back after this. Hey, today's show is sponsored by SunsetLakeCBD.com. I've talked about this company, about this CBD for almost a year now, going on a year. And I got to tell you, it's a great company. They sell a great product. We've talked about the CBD tincture and how I use that for sleeping, and the CBD salve with arnica, and that is great for your sore muscles. The smokables, all their CBD is 100% pesticide free. They use integrated pest management in their agricultural practices. They also use regenerative agricultural practices, which saves the land. They're a great business in terms of their the way they treat their workers. $15 minimum wage. This is up in Vermont, just outside of Burlington. The company is mostly employee-owned, and they genuinely care about their community. Right now, SunsetLakeCBD.com, they have been focusing on particularly their community in Alburgh, Vermont, and specifically the issue of childcare and childcare providers meeting the needs of working families. I think we've done much work on this program talking about the deficiencies that kids who do not get high quality childcare, do not get pre-K, when they go into elementary school, they're in a deficit situation in terms of learning. Well, children in high quality early learning environments have much better educational outcomes. And Sunset Lake CBD is working towards doing what they can to help their communities' childcare issues. So from January 20th through January 31st, so you got only 2 days left, or 3 days left here, I guess. Today, tomorrow, and the next day, right? 31 days in January. Sunset Lake CBD is donating 10% of their online sales to the Alburgh Family Clubhouse. It's going to provide much-needed affordable childcare in their community. They already donated $2,500 in December. So if you're contemplating getting some CBD products, you've probably bought, maybe you have the gummies and you're about to run out, or maybe you have the Sunset Lake CBD infused coffee and it's about to run out. Head over there now before the end of the month, and 10% of your purchase will go towards helping those families in Alburgh. And if you use the coupon code Left is Best, big fans of the show, they have been for quite some time, and they want the coupon code Left is Best, one word, you get 20% off yourself. So they're really going to the mat for this, and I really appreciate this company. I appreciate their sponsorship of the show. I use their products almost daily.
And I love those gummies, gotta say.
I was on the 3,000 milligram tincture last night. So check it out, folks. SunsetLakeCBD.com. And later in the program, when we end it today and go into the fun half, we got a song from a listener, Leighton Peterson. And we'll play that at the end, but it's a version of La Poupée. He's got a...
Any relation to Jordan?
That would be awkward. But you can check out his old band Safe Boating is no accident at bandcamp.com, Spotify, Apple, any of that stuff. But we will play that later.
That's a funny name.
It is, isn't it?
Safe Boating is no accident.
And also, don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member. Join themajorityreport.com. All right. Let's, do we have Alex?
He's joining now.
All right, great. I'd like to welcome back to the program our friend, writer at the New Republic, and co-host of the Politics of Everything, Alex Pareene. Alex, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much.
My understanding is that's a Cyclones hat. Is that right?
That is. It's a Brooklyn Cyclones hat.
Nice.
Is that a bike
nice.
in the background?
That is also a bicycle in the background. Correct.
Cyclones and cycling.
Yeah. Cat walk by there too. Very exciting. Alex, great to have you here. I went back and I looked at what you've been writing since the 8th. And all of these, what's interesting about the era that we're in right now, this short period of time between when Joe Biden has only been president for 9 days.
Yeah.
But it is we have seen him issue a ton of executive orders, and most of which sort of bring us back to a certain baseline. They're nothing hugely revolutionary, although I would argue certainly for folks like immigrants and DACA recipients, really, I think, have an incredible immediate material benefit to them. And whether it's, the sort of the moratorium on deportations, we had a judge that said you can't do that, but there's really no way to enforce that. There's no way to deport everybody who theoretically you could. You're always making those determinations. So there's some real meaningful actions that he's taken with these executive orders, and some that are, not necessarily performative, but maybe more indicative of where the administration might go.
Yeah.
The big issue is the COVID relief bill. And simultaneously, the other issue that is sort of ongoing is impeachment. And so let's, I think there's a relationship here in terms of like what's happening with impeachment is one of the things that's influencing the perspective of Democrats in the Senate as to whether they have a negotiating partner on the other side.
Right.
Let's talk about where the state of play is today, because it seems to have changed in the past 24 hours, or at least we're getting an indication of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that there is a connection in the sense that it's the immediate litmus test for it's the litmus test for whether the Biden argument, where regardless of what you thought, how sincere you thought Biden was being about the fever breaking, whether or not that's actually has any hope of happening, and whether the senators can do what they really want to do, which is find their reasonable colleagues on the other side and hammer out bills with them, and come to compromises that no one's happy with. And I think that I hope will clarify that there aren't 10 negotiating partners over there that they're going to find who are going to help with anything.
Yeah, and now you wrote a piece just a couple of days ago, I guess about a week ago, which was don't worry about Joe Manchin, because the way that we've been sort of looking at this, there's two issues in the Senate right now. It is whether the filibuster will be quashed, and in the absence of that, or maybe also directly related to that, is Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, ostensibly to sort of let the gates open up in terms of letting the Senate move forward and getting McConnell to agree to a sort of a resolution for new rules for the new Senate, was to come out and vow that they will not the filibuster. What?
Right.
All right. First off, give us your take on the breaking on the nature of that vow.
It's not terribly surprising to hear from Joe Manchin. And I think the reason is that he has to remain committed to his, most conservative Democrat line. Like, the reason I said not to worry about him in that piece was that Manchin is bad on a lot of issues, but on the things that are most important for this early part of the Biden presidency, he's not going to be the thing that stops it. He's not going to say, I don't want money for vaccines. Even when he was complaining about the checks, he very quickly qualified that by saying, of course, I just want them to be a little bit more means tested. Just help me out and make them a little bit more means tested, which is,
absolutely not. And then the market tanked within 2 hours.
Yes. Yeah. Like he's kind of willing to go along, but you have to be like prod him. He needs to be prodded. And I do think like in the Trump, during the Trump years, like he wanted to be on the winning side of votes and he wants to be on the winning side of votes now. But then you get to the filibuster. And this is where I now wonder, like, all right, Manchin says, I will not change my mind on the filibuster. Does that mean he is vowing to maintain this status quo of a de facto 60 vote requirement for everything? Or does that mean we have to come up with a way to allow me to go home and say, the filibuster is still in place, but then we find a way to actually have these votes? I wonder if Manchin is maybe more about preserving the filibuster as a concept whilst finding a way to actually get things done. Sinema is much more of a chaos agent. I mean, I don't like Sinema is just a chaos agent. I don't know what she wants, but my feeling is that like Manchin's going to be less of a problem than the sort of senators who I think absolutely want to spend all their time negotiating with Republicans rather than actually accomplishing things.
I want to I want to touch that second cohort of people, like the Mark Warners and the Gang 16. And apparently they have had some pretty bad news as of like sort of later in the day yesterday. But I want to get to that in a moment. But will you just and I understand what you're saying with Sinema. It's very hard to sort of like peg what she even perceives her brand is.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit more about Manchin's brand and how that impacts, because I think like people, it's hard to understand the way that senators see themselves.
Yeah.
And how they run and their relationship with their constituencies. And there's votes, they take votes or positions that aren't necessarily directly appealing to their constituents, but support a brand that they're trying to project.
Right. And, with Manchin, it is like he needs to buck leadership, and he needs to make himself sort of sell himself to people who voted for Trump, because most of his state voted for Trump. And it plays out in funny ways. In Trump's first impeachment, Manchin voted to oust him, and then within a few weeks was like talking to reporters being like, well, I haven't made up my mind in the 2020 presidential election yet. I'm not saying I'm going to endorse Trump, but I'm open to anything. Like that's kind of the balance he has to strike, or at least the way he understands the balance he has to strike. What I think is, I think that doesn't necessarily make him an opponent of actually doing things, because I think what he wants is just good press in West Virginia, and he wants to be able to get on TV, the local news in West Virginia, and say, like, here's what we did in the Senate. So I contrast that to a Mark Warner or like a Robert Menendez in New Jersey, whose goal is actually to stop things from happening quietly. Like these are the sort of Democrats who in the House, for example, wanted to keep sabotaging efforts to bring down prescription drug costs, but doing it like quietly in backroom negotiations. I think that's a different variety of moderate Democrat than a kind of like Manchin, who's like, I got a lot of Trump people back home I got to appeal to, so that means like sometimes I'm gonna make a big point of being like, I'm fighting my own side, but at the end of the day, is like not actually like opposed to the Democrats passing a huge stimulus or something like that.
Well, the qualitative difference between the Democrats that you mentioned, like Warner and Menendez, is that they are even more beholden to specific industries than I would even say that Manchin is, who is doing a lot of what Sam has been saying, which is it's more of an exercise in political branding for him than it is like, I am the gatekeeper for the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to Menendez in New Jersey, or the credit card companies when it comes to Mark Warner. Like, that's a lot more of a specific goal of theirs than just a branding exercise.
Manchin has that when it comes to
coal,
yeah.
but for these negotiations, that's
right. I mean,
different.
speak to like, there is this sense that the members of that gang of 16, essentially, particularly the Democratic ones, they want the fig leaf of compromise.
Yeah,
way of getting rid of stuff that might be really detrimental or disliked by the donor class.
Exactly. And I think, the point of something like the Gang of 16 is precisely to say, like, well, sure, if the Democrats wanted to just do this on their own, there would be support for a bigger stimulus. But then, like, without having to come out and say, I oppose this, they can say, but look, like, we have to get these 8 Republicans in our Gang of 16 on board. So whatever we do is going to have to be acceptable to them. The joke of it is, like, it's 8 Republicans. They couldn't get 2 more for their phony gang. Like, 8 Republicans is not enough to actually pass a 60 vote threshold anyway. But but like it's meant to find a way for certain moderates to prevent populist things from happening without having to personally come out against them.
Can we just, I hadn't even occurred to me about that Gang of 16 because I'm so used to the sort of series over the past 20 years of the 4 and the Gang of 3 and this and that. But this is really important and really does, in many respects, give away the game.
Yeah.
If you can't get 10 Republicans to vote for your compromise, as opposed to 8 or 9 or 7, etc., it's worthless. It doesn't matter if you lose 58 to 42 in terms of trying to overturn the filibuster or 51 to 49. Like, you lose either way. So if you get 10, this is an exercise in, I mean, pick your word that involves you sitting at home doing nothing.
Yeah. And it's so then the Gang of 16 suddenly becomes the best argument for doing away with the filibuster. I mean, it's even for a group of senators that have not agreed on a compromise, but have agreed to be open to a compromise. You cannot get 10 Republicans on board to agree to be open to a future compromise. Right. So at that point, like, I don't know, the Gang of 16, I don't know what their theory is of how they're going to pass anything that they negotiate amongst themselves. Like, it doesn't work without, like, finding 2 more Republicans willing to play along.
And you can't even get 2 who are willing to even pretend like they're. Yeah. I mean, that gives you a sense of just how. This is the old sort of construct. Like, is there a partner for peace across the on the other side? And there clearly isn't, because you can't even get enough of them to start a negotiation. Never mind, come to some type of resolution. And we are seeing, it seems to me, the implications of that. Yesterday afternoon. I mean, I'm looking at headlines from Politico and HuffPost that basically say the Gang of 16 feels like they're stabbed in the back. But the point is, they could never deliver anyways.
Yeah, what could they deliver? I mean, this is, I think I saw Dave Weigel make this point, but having a 50 vote majority makes it a lot easier to ignore Republicans than having a 58 vote majority. When you have a 58 vote majority, you say to yourself, well, we don't need to blow up the Senate. We just got to peel away 2 Republicans. And then those 2 Republicans can sort of sabotage everything. That's what we saw in Obama's first term. If you have 57, 58 seats, it's very easy to lie to yourself and say, we'll get 3 of the good Republicans on board. If you have 50 seats plus the vice president, how do you convince yourself after the last decade you will get the cooperation of 10 Republicans for anything? It's absurd.
All right. Well, so you wrote about the way forward in terms of the filibuster, which is keep the filibuster in name.
Yeah, exactly.
Reform it in such a way that as a function, it doesn't function in the same way. Just talk about a couple of different options from your perspective. We spoke to Eric Levitz about this. I guess it was yesterday. He mentioned a couple that might be more along the lines of reconciliation. Like, for instance, if you had a certain type of legislation, you only needed 50+1.
Yeah.
If it was healthcare, or if it was, something that Joe Manchin didn't have a problem with, like if it wasn't climate change, let's say.
Yeah.
But you also have a couple of ideas as well.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that the filibuster is as it has worked since basically 2009. It's just not sustainable. Something will change. I actually believe. I believe this. Harry Reid is it's not a matter of. It's just a matter of when it will change. And so, but I think what we need to do is find a way to allow senators to say, look, the filibuster's still around. We just changed sort of the details around how it worked. And there's a history of that. That's why there's a 60 vote requirement instead of a 2/3 supermajority requirement. And then that ended up sort of not working as intended. So anyway, one idea is that I borrowed from, sorry, I'm about to be annoying. One idea is to say, all right, 41 senators can block something, but they have to represent a majority of the population, which is actually a really fun idea that I like and would run the entire Senate that way to effectively make it a more democratic institution. But the fact that it would make it more democratic is probably why the Senate would hate it. But that's from Michael Ettinger, who's at University of New Hampshire and worked for Clinton Kane. But I mean, it's like a clever idea. You could run the whole Senate that way and then not have to blow up the Senate to make it a democratic institution.
The best thing from the perspective of Democrats is, of course, that their 50 senators or 50 or 60 senator or whatever it is, their senators will always represent more people, likely, than Republican ones. But they'll never go for that. But there were other ideas.
Yeah, this is Norm Ornstein came up with one that is so modest that I actually think it has a realistic shot of happening, which is basically as we know, the way the filibuster works now is any senator can just block something, and then you have to assemble 60 votes to end the filibuster and then vote on the legislation. His idea, which he actually came up with 2 years ago, I think, was just to sort of reverse that requirement, and then instead the minority has to assemble 41 votes to actively block something. And if they can't do it, then a simple majority can pass a bill. It obviously does a lot less to kill the filibuster than other alternatives, but it would definitely make it a lot more a sort of a logistical challenge and an annoyance to obstruct something if you always had to have 41 of your fellow members on the floor basically actively blocking it.
And it also holds these senators more to account, right?
Exactly.
Because they're doing something proactive to stop something rather than just sort of sitting back and not helping something pass.
And also it stops the situation where, because this is one of the reasons that we got to this point, is that, people started paying attention to cloture votes. I think throughout much of the 80s and 90s, a senator could get away with a cloture vote and then voting against the bill. And that was just considered normal. And then people began getting scored on the cloture vote. So a Republican now cannot go to their base and say, "Look, I voted with the Democrats on the cloture vote, but then I voted against Joe Biden's terrible stimulus plan." That just doesn't work anymore. But now, if you aren't asking for an affirmative vote on anything from the Republicans, they can sort of let things slide without worrying about getting destroyed a little bit more.
All right, so let's talk about this reporting that the path to compromise has basically run its course, and we now see the Democrats in the Senate and the administration start to really look towards reconciliation as the vehicle for this. And it seems to me there's still time for them to say, okay, we're going to do you guys a favor and we're going to give you an opportunity to vote for, let's say, shots.
Yeah, totally.
This is the shots and checks proposal from David Dayen, which is just separate out the shots and checks, let them vote for it because it gives them the opportunity to say to their constituents, hey, I voted for something. Because and then you can maybe get a little more room to even do a little bigger reconciliation package. Yep. That number of 1.9 billion is out there. So if you separate off shots and the checks into one package, you might be able to get a bigger reconciliation bill, because otherwise you have 50 Republicans, half a dozen at least, who are up for some like tenuous elections in 2022. They're going to have to vote against that reconciliation bill, or it's going to ruin the look that Democrats did this unilaterally.
Yeah.
They're going to be voting against vaccinations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's different than the shots and checks strategy, right? Because the flip side is, if you keep it in the massive $1.9 trillion stimulus, then you force Republicans to not have voted for those checks.
Right. But I think the idea, yes, it's sort of win-win either way politically, but the benefit of separating off the shots and checks, it seems to me, and Alex, I want you to weigh in on this, is you could possibly get more overall.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. And I think also too, like, the shots and like the shots especially, like, that's needed now. And I know like Congress doesn't do urgency very well, but it does just seem like, for simplicity, we should just do the shots and checks ASAP. And then, because they're going to spend a month, maybe a month and a half negotiating this reconciliation. Like, this is going to be like the big, like, March vote, right? It'll be a vote-a-rama with senators doing amendments and all that stuff. That's one thing if it's like the giant stimulus package that the budget committees or whatever are going to hammer out. But like the money for vaccinations and money for direct relief, like that should just come as soon as possible. I agree that is the correct strategy. I don't think the White House wants to do it that way, but I agree that that's the way they should be doing it.
And so give me a sense of like where we are relative to well, I guess let's shift over to impeachment for a moment, because impeachment is also like, how much is the fact that only 5 Republicans in the Senate now are willing to even say they want impeachment to go forward, right? Like, never mind, they don't think he should be impeached. They don't even think the insurrection warrants a trial for impeachment. How much do you think that is playing on the sense that we should go through reconciliation, or we have no partners here? And there's also one other element, and it was reported yesterday that Ossoff and Warnock, Ossoff in particular, I think it was reported, but both of them, that they in the Senate caucus meeting made a real big point of like, we got to deliver these checks.
Yeah.
How much does having 2 senators from Georgia, of all places, who won in a very isolated fashion, right? We were all paying attention to that race.
Yep.
All paying attention to their vow about the $2,000 checks. How much does that work in the favor of those of us who want the Democrats to go big? Because I don't care where I'm from. If I'm a Democratic senator and I've got 2 guys from Georgia saying this is what we need, they're the front line, the most front line of frontline Democrats in the Senate, I would think. Yep. And they're telling us to go big. How do I justify, like, I'm afraid of my constituents if I go big? How does Warner sit there and say, like, we have to stay small?
It becomes a lot harder. And I like, that's actually just in terms of the entire political debate, and especially in Congress, it's almost not recognizable from 10, 11 years ago, or even 8 or 9 years ago, right? Like, people, I think the fact that you have these 2 senators who obviously are brand new to the institution and therefore don't have their sort of commitment to its tradition of comity and all that. Like, I mean, for them, like, it's refreshing to hear two Southern Democrats say, like, we just want to directly deliver to our constituents. We promised we would, and now we need to keep that promise. I think it makes it a lot harder to sort of play the same delaying games and minimizing of scope games that senators like Joe Lieberman played at the beginning of Barack Obama's term. It helps that Biden's economic team seems pretty much on board with going big. There's not a lot of deficit talk coming from that part of the Democratic Party right now, which is remarkable. Like, that's not what it was like during the recession at all.
Yeah, coincidentally, Joe Lieberman is in the news today for opposing abolishing the filibuster, which is just shocking. A lot of progressives.
Is it shocking?
I'm sarcastic as I could possibly be. I can't believe you missed that sarcasm. But anyway, I a lot of progressives were concerned about the fact that Biden marketed these checks as $2,000, and really it's just going to be making up the difference with $1,400, and that's just seems like what's going to happen. I initially was concerned about it. I'm a little less concerned about the marketing now, and how it's going to play. Like, if Republicans can twist it and say they broke their promise. Obviously, I'd like to go bigger, but what's your sense of that politically? Because Ossoff and Warnock are on the front lines talking about the urgency of it. But do you think that that's a significant schism in terms of how the Democrats push this in the runoffs and how it's actually going to play out?
I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. Because again, a lot of it comes down to what we were just talking about in terms of timing, right? The longer we go from the last round of checks, like, the more case there is to be made for making them larger again. If it was this is the check that's going to top you off from the last one, maybe that made a lot more sense when it was maybe going to come in January, and now January's almost done. So I don't know. That's I guess would be my political case again for going larger. I feel like if they are going to go through a reconciliation process, they're going to sort of renegotiate all of this. I think everything's going to be on the table, but I don't know. Well, we'll see. I think what might end up happening is $2,000 checks that are just a little bit more means tested, something like that. But like right now, I think everything's pretty up in the air.
Let's talk just a little bit about, we're now into a full week into or at least a week plus into the Biden administration. And I think we had been talking about in the run up to the Biden administration that there was certainly a different feeling than during the Obama, the beginning of the Obama years. And there's another phenomenon I think is really interesting. And we're seeing it in terms of different picks. I mean, Merrick Garland is promoting the head of the DOJ antitrust division, a former Facebook lawyer, which obviously I think, you don't have to know much about antitrust to know that Facebook is like at the top of the list to be examined in that way. But it's been leaked that Garland is doing that. And there is now, again, we're seeing this play out. We've seen this play out a couple of times now where the name gets floated out there and there's pushback. And the interesting thing about this dynamic is it tells me two things. It tells me there are people in the administration who don't want the Biden administration to be like the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And they're talking to reporters about it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that what's being clear is that there's no constituency. There's no mirror image of this.
Yeah.
There's no version of like they're looking at this sort of progressive antitrust fighter, or they're looking at, Gary Gensler, and we're going to leak out that name so that the constituency for people who want more corporate influence in the that dynamic's not happening.
Yeah.
And really interesting because I don't know if this is a new thing or if there's just not, or it's just a function of the time. But what do you think about that dynamic?
The composition of people who make up Democratic lawmakers and the Democratic world, the composition of those people has changed significantly since 2008, 2009, and that there are left-leaning populists who not only are in the Democratic constituency or in the Democratic caucus, but who have some power and influence within it, right? Like they aren't the marginal. We've talked about this before, but like it used to be like, okay, well, you got Dennis Kucinich, no one listens to him. He's the only one, and now it's like, the fact is that, and the media treated people like Kucinich as a joke. That was an important part of it too. The press absolutely treated people like Kucinich as a complete joke. Now they actually sort of do have to take seriously Ocasio-Cortez, and they have to take seriously these new more progressive, more populist Democrats, because I think there's a belated recognition that they actually have a popular constituency. So anyway, that is reflected in this dynamic too, where Biden was not the first choice of this younger, more populist crowd, and so therefore people don't feel like we all need to get behind him to help him win. They feel like I have space to like push him in my direction, and that's a new dynamic from before. And I think so there are definitely people in the Biden administration who would like a comfortable return to 1996. Like they actually can't just sort of do that without this new populist element noticing and making noise about it.
Let me ask you one more question that maybe deserves its own entire conversation about. But one thing I've noticed just in the past couple of days, we have this sort of attempt, I think, by Biden, by the press on some level, to sort of move into a post-Trump era for the Republicans. And that seems to be out the window, in part because of January 6th, and in part because of the way that Republicans are reacting to it. This demand and, things like Marjorie Greene. But I watched Brian Williams. There's a clip of Brian Williams going around where they accidentally played, or they presumably were going to show some video of McCarthy meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and they accidentally played a clip. I don't know from what Tom.
Jerry Maguire.
Where it's basically like he said, he says, I love you. And she says, you had me, at hello. And the idea that the media, and Brian Williams is no, a huge lefty. I mean, he's a moderate guy. I mean, literally a moderate. The idea that the mainstream media is looking at the Republicans with such a jaundiced eye is a very, very new development. I mean, like without Trump a year ago, I feel like everybody would say this is the day that McCarthy finally became president. Yeah. And instead, in the absence of Trump, they are still on some level holding them to account. It's almost like they can't, what else can they do? Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break, and then I want you to respond to that. All right, so respond to that notion, Alex, that the media is not, like as much as they desperately, I think, wanted to.
I think,
cannot return. They cannot pretend that the Republicans are normal.
Yeah, and Republicans, in a sense, are trapped. I think the media, the sort of large national political media was primed to give Republicans an out as the Trump era was ending. I think it wouldn't have been hard for a few people, and for a few people like McConnell to have made a definitive break and say, all right, we've turned the Etch-a-Sketch upside down and shaken it. And now we're back to being like the sober Republicans again. But like the fact that they actually cannot separate themselves from him is making that a lot more difficult. And then, the fact that McCarthy literally could not, go for more than a few days after having said Trump bore some responsibility for what happened. He couldn't hold that line for more than a few days. And, makes it's a little surprising because like Trump, now that he's off Twitter, not on TV, it's like he kind of he left a vacuum in the discourse, but like Republicans are still stuck to him.
Well, that's right. He left a vacuum in the sort of general discourse, but in the Republican circles, I think it's still dominated by him. That's it for us today. We will be back on Monday with more. Alex, thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
All right, we're still sticking around. I just want to give last words. We just, said goodbye to our Peacock audience.
Yes.
Folks, if you missed any part of this, you can obviously watch the show on the Peacock app on the Choice channel, 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. But this is really sort of amazing. I mean, that was the thing that really struck me about that Brian Williams segment. How
long does it last? Is my point. Like, how long does the fever last? I guess.
Well, how long does the fever last, or is the skepticism by the press?
I mean, I was mixing metaphors, but yes, the skepticism by the press. I just don't know. I don't know.
Alex?
I don't. It depends a great deal on, I think, like Trump's continued hold on the party, right? Like if he and his kids are still like trying to dominate things and sending their lackeys around to yell at Liz Cheney and stuff like that, I think it lasts for a while. And I think the impeachment trial is going to be like another sort of albatross around their neck, depending on, because it's like the January 6th changed the way a lot of these mainstream press people think about these Republicans. The fact that they couldn't stand up to that, I think, really, and people like McConnell had the opportunity to, again, reset afterwards, and McConnell got some good press for definitively coming out as deploring that, and then comes a few weeks later has decided the Constitution does not allow the Senate to put Trump on trial for it.
I mean, that is the thing, is that I think what's going on is this strange dynamic where McConnell was leaking to the New York Times that he was happy that this impeachment was happening, and now publicly and saying, and it's almost like one of that situation where it's like, we broke up, and then after like 3 or 4 months, we got back together. And that second time that you get back together after breaking up, things get a lot more serious and real, right? Because it's like, okay, why are we doing this? On some level, like I think the media watched the Republicans break up with Trump for a week.
Yeah.
Essentially, and then get back together with him, and wait a second,
they're
this
like,
time
this is a toxic relationship. I'm rejecting you.
Well, it's more like this is serious now. Like we thought they were just dating, but now it's like they're getting married.
Yeah.
Pregnant.
Exactly. Like, this is serious. Why would you get back together with him now that he's gone? And they did. And I think the press is reacting to that. Like, I'm of the mind now where it should be, Schumer should say basically, okay, we're doing 1 day of impeachment, 2 days of impeachment in February, 2 days of impeachment in March, impeachment in April, 2 days of impeachment in May. We're going to drag this out for 6 months to see how long you guys are, like, how committed you are to Donald Trump. Because I think it's basically,
McCarthy's enlisting his help for 2022. Like I think McConnell made the calculation where he thought, having this guy to drum up the base while he's like semi-invisible to the mainstream on his social media, with his social media presence being gone, that's helpful. We can enlist him for half-assed speeches at rallies for our congressional candidates, and we can try to move on from a branding exercise.
I think McConnell's terrified of it, because Donald Trump is could very well be the reason why they lose they don't gain back the House and they lose the Senate. Because if you're Donald Trump, it's not like Donald Trump's going to be, in 2 years going to be like, you guys did me a real solid by not voting for me for impeachment. Therefore, I'm not going to go around and support, primaries against your vulnerable senators. Of course he's going to do that.
Yeah. And because he holds them responsible for not stealing the election for him. And he's like,
my doubts that he'll even do these rallies, though. The point is, like, I mean, he's such a wild card. I guess that my analysis there applied more to McCarthy, but like, about him using him for that. But like, I have my doubts that if there's nothing in it for Trump, why would he do any rallies for these Republicans? Why would he involve himself?
Merch sales.
And Ivanka is now seriously floating the idea of primarying Rubio. So,
yeah, no, I mean that's the thing to like what the sort of orbit of his family members and what they're gonna, because like, you know, Trump, as we all know, like will vow revenge, but is also very lazy. But you know, his kids are a little bit more of hustlers, and like they actually might go around making things miserable, because they have really, again, no sort of commitment to strengthening the Republican Party as it is.
Well, Alex, always a pleasure. Folks can check out your podcast, I assume, in the same way that everybody checks out any...
Same way you would find any other podcast. The Politics of Everything from the New Republic.
And I can't encourage people enough to read your stuff in the New Republic. We'll, in fact, put a link to those very pieces at the New Republic. That's the most I can do. All
right. I appreciate it.
Alex, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks,
really appreciate
Alex.
it.
You're welcome.
All right. Now, we're not going to go into that fun half quite yet. We have another guest. I got to tell people right now that I am probably going to have to drop out shortly. I have some weird thing where I had like I had like a crick in my neck that has now moved into the back of my head. So I'm like, I don't know if people notice, I just been doing a lot of this.
Sam's in pain.
I'm a little bit in pain.
Yeah,
but not in so much pain that I cannot welcome Francesca Fiorentini to the show. Apparently, you are the host of the Bitchuation Room.
Well, yeah, that is true. Thank you so much, Sam. I'm sorry about your neck.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't hold you to blame at all for it. I want you to know.
I do.
No, I hold Emma to blame mostly. Me second, you last. I mean, God, you're just a straight white man in a podcast world, just struggling.
You know, to keep up with Father Time.
That's right.
Father Time is the real.
Like literally, yes, exactly. I'm getting old, and the Father Time. I'm not convinced that it wasn't my son, sort of like trying out some new, headlock on me. How are you, Francesca?
Oh, I'm good. I'm just, trying to get this stock rally going on Claire's accessories, but no one seems to be jumping on sexists. I truly want to figure out which store we want to. Is it Hot Topic? Is it Claire's? Is it like
somebody's on Spencer's?
Yeah, didn't that already go under?
Spencer Gifts is not.
What?
Yeah, I mean, are these companies publicly tradable? Claire's is still publicly tradable.
I have no idea what that means, but you can get in on the ground level with me, Emma.
Is that where you got your ears pierced? Because that is a rite of passage for us women, is going to Claire's and having. Absolutely.
And they have to mess it up. And so you go back a second time. Just kidding. Your friend does it with a needle. Yeah, that is every woman's experience. And man, everyone's experience is that. What we're saying is we want to tank the stock of Claire's.
All right. Well, speaking of that, I want to play this clip of Leon Cooperman complaining about. Now, this guy is a hedge fund guy. Is he a billionaire or a multi-billionaire? I want to know how much I should take him seriously. Okay, multi-billionaire. So I take him pretty seriously.
Kind of a poor rich
guy. He's a job creator.
He's in his mid to late 70s. I can't imagine if I had, never mind $3 billion, never mind $1 billion. If I had if I had a net worth that had anything to do with an illion at the end of it, the idea that at age 77, I'm going on CNBC to cry about what's happening with GameStop just seems completely bizarre to me. But here he is. He's on CNBC. He is mad.
moving out in the risk curve.
Yeah.
And one of these days, not today, not tomorrow, but one of these days, people are going to come in on the risk curve. And I think we have lots of issues to deal with. We have an enormous national debt to deal with. And basically, I don't think interest rates belong where they are. I mean, just think about it. We're borrowing tons of money, and taxes are likely to go up. You know, just listen to it. Right now, President Biden is tackling the easy things. All of us want to get the virus behind us, right? So anything he does to battle the virus is universally welcome. When he starts talking about raising tax on capital gains, raising tax on ordinary income, in a recent speech, he's talked about fair share. I hate that expression with a passion. What does fair share mean? I've said in your program numerous times, basically, I'm willing to work 6 months a year for the government and 6 months for myself, which means a marginal tax rate of 50%. You live in California, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, you're already well past that, okay? And this fair share is a bullshit concept. It's just a way of attacking wealthy people, and, you know, I think it's inappropriate. We all got to work together and pull together.
Well,
and I think that's my view.
Work together, pull together. Okay, work together, pull together. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think there is a large cohort of people.
I just want to say this. The chances that this guy is paying an effective tax rate of 50%, I would put somewhere around like 2%.
Yeah, no.
I'm not saying his effective rate is 2%. I'm saying the chances that he's paying 50%. This guy owns essentially a small tax firm that figures out how he doesn't pay 50% of his income. I'm sorry. There's just no way. But continue.
A large cohort of people who are tired of seeing the system not work for them. And this
the system is not working for them. You know, it's the government has created the policy. You know, the government is inflating financial assets. Financial assets are not owned by everyone. They're owned by wealthy people. And the government is trying to get the money back from the wealthy people by raising marginal tax rates, by creating such a low interest rate environment. But look at it this way. If you're a 40% tax bracket, and I think you probably live in New Jersey, so you're probably over 50%.
Wait, he kind of stumbled onto something we would hope would happen at the end there, but that's definitely not what's happening right now.
This idea that, yes, the wealthy is getting too big of a piece of the pie, and so we're going to claw some of that back via taxes.
Yeah. Exactly, but he's not actually answering the question. I love the anchor trying to be like, "But you see, hungry people exist in the world, and do you have, sir, empathy?" Anyway, no. You see, the thing is, empathy is a college thing. You know, you throw that out along with, a couple of wives, and like he's so convinced. I mean, this is the thing about this is where we're headed, you guys. We are gonna keep seeing the millionaires and billionaires unironically saying, first they came for the millionaires and I did not speak up because I was not a millionaire. Then they came for the billionaires. As my good friend, comedian Nato Green says, and then everything was pretty much okay.
Yeah.
Once we come for them, we're good. But like it's always about attacks on the powerful. The persecution complex of billionaires is incredible when they get off, with, again, like you're saying, they're not paying 50% of their taxes or tax rate.
In the viral clip we played yesterday, it was spliced together with him complaining that people were getting too much cash out the door because of this COVID stimulus stuff, which is the other interesting thing, like that he's using this as, I wonder like how, because he voted for Biden. He said he voted against his pocketbook and with his heart. And I wonder if like this is what some Democrats are hearing from the big money people, like, hey, these people have too much money and they're threatening the markets.
Yeah, Biden's going to be really tough on the market. Like, Biden is going to really crack down on what I have zero faith that that's the reality.
There's 2 points about that viral clip. One is, first off, it is impossible for a guy who has $3 billion in assets to be voting against his pocketbook. He can never know how much is in that pocketbook. That is $3 billion. It's such an abstraction. There is simply no way for him to expend that amount of money and be aware of it. So there's nothing that Joe Biden can do essentially, that will change this guy's life in a material way whatsoever. We could take away 2/3 of his wealth and he would have $1 billion. And in a million years, he would, or I should say his entire life from age 77, or if he started at 0, would he ever be aware that he lost that $2 billion except for someone holding up a sign saying you lost 2 of your $3 billion? A, and B, the idea that the market is functioning this way, that this is a function of people getting checks because he read that one guy used his stimulus check to sort of, I don't know, invest in Nokia or whatever it was. The reason why the market is inflated like this is because of that CARES Act, where Treasury gave $500 billion as a backstop to the Fed. And the Fed essentially just said, we will backstop anything. We will give you corporate loans at 0% interest, all you can have, folks. This is basically an all-you-can-eat buffet. And the market just a day later was just back up and has stayed up. I mean, it's so disconnected from what's going on in the economy at this point. Yeah. And for this guy to complain about people getting a small check, it's unbelievable.
Well, he's also complaining about the whole GameStop phenomenon, right? Because it's such an insular casino. It's not even a casino that anybody can get into, right? Like they bar the doors if your net worth is under $1 million, if it doesn't have that alien.
Exactly.
And so like they're offended that their country club casino, the doors kind of got broken into and some of the plebes were able to participate for a little bit and tanked their hedge funds that were driving down again. Like they were shorting GameStop and stock to a point that it made their investing in GameStop toxic because they were shorting over 100% of what GameStop was even worth stock-wise. So like they're allowed to do that and regular people aren't allowed to participate in the market and, you know, maybe take a dip in the pool at the country club. It's a country club hybrid casino thing. This is my you know.
No, I mean that's what their floating tax haven will eventually be. I just can't wait for them to get to Mars. Like, why can we, like, if they just go or if they just create their floating tax island, whatever, everything will be fine for us. We got this, you know. But I just use your take your $3 billion. If it's real, if it's not, take it and go. Jump on Elon's back and ride off to safety. I'm so sick of having to deal with their whining. But you're right. I mean, I think the GameStop stuff is great. My brain wants to ignore all of it because I'm like, I hate the stock market. It's all bad. But it's true that, like, actually it exposes the fact that the entire thing has always been a casino, and they're just mad that the low rollers, you know, we know 10% of Americans own 90% of the stock. That's insane, right? These are the wealthiest Americans. And now that a few low rollers with $5 got to enter into their casino, they're mad. And so exposing the entire thing. Have we talked about Claire's though? Because
I'm not convinced they're not at Mars already. I think that's where the laser is actually.
You would know, Sam.
I mean, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I probably should have checked.
Potential email, Sam.
I should have checked at the Brotherhood room before I. Folks, we're going to take a break and head into the fun half. And Emma and Francesca are going to hold down the ship because I am going to go and rest my neck or the back of my head.
Yeah, Sam's a trooper. He's been in a lot of pain.
Get like a lavender bean pillow.
I can't do lavender.
Yeah, no lavender.
Lavender, that would be
scent.
It's scented. I would drive
you know
me crazy.
I use a lavender soap. You've never noticed that in the studio.
Well, I got the plastic tarp here.
Oh, are you a Scents and Lotions lib?
Yeah.
Can you not?
One of those guys.
Oh no.
All right, so folks, don't forget you can support the show by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Check out Nomi's show today, right after this one, 3 p.m. The youtube.com/the Nomiki show and twitch.tv _Nomiki_ show. And also check out twitch.tv /the Antifada. Matt, quick, what's happening on in the Matt Leckian universe?
Yeah, we had Jen Pan of the Jacobin show on last night. We talked about how to escape the culture war and some of this GameStop stuff.
All right.
Patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
646-257-3920. Emma will take some phone calls, and we'll all be back in just a moment.
Oh, wow.
It's
I
amazing.
didn't notice that the first time.
Man, was that the first time that song's been played?
It was just sent to us the other day. So, yeah.
I love
Who by?
1 second. I'll look
So
that up for
good.
you.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it. It's going to be stuck in my head all day.
We
Leighton
should just
Peterson.
explain. Who was that?
Leighton Peterson, the Safe Boating Bandcamp guy.
Oh, right. So we used to play, for newer listeners, we used to play a version of that song between the fun half and the real show back in the old days. So that might be a trip down memory lane for some people.
Yeah, well, I am one of those newer listeners, so.
I have no idea where I am right now, honestly. So
it's a weird song.
It's a really good song.
It sounds good. The lyrics, it's La Poupée qui fait non, which is the doll that says no, which is, it gets a little bit, Robin Thicke vibes to it.
That's a little Me Too-y. That's like,
yeah.
It would not have come out in the year 2019, but like 2012, all good kind of thing.
Well, maybe in France it could still come out, but
Yeah.
Yeah, Robin Thicke, that whole era definitely was, but that was like 2012 and stuff. With the video was problematic too, I believe.
Blurred lines, yeah.
Blurred lines, yeah. Well, I mean, it's in
I was living outside of the country at the time, and I came back, and like the greatest hits on the radio were Usher's "Love in the Club," and I was just like, he's talking about having sex in a club, people, and I was like, what is this country? And then Robin Thicke's song, and suddenly Kim and Kanye were together. It was a hard time, is what I'm trying to say. The Obama years, I was out of the country, so it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, not a good time for music in general. Although I'm a known non-cool music fan. I was listening to Jackson Browne as I was reading the articles before the show today. So Sam likes to make fun of that.
Oh no, that was basically peak Nicki Minaj. So
it was, which is why I'm not a fan.
All right, well, let's get into these clips, and then I will take some calls. You think we should do calls later or calls first? What do you guys think?
You're captaining the ship now, Emma. You fly it however you like.
It's my first time. It's my first.
Emma, you're amazing. All hail Emma. Love Emma Vigeland. I'm so happy to be here with you on a Friday. Do what you feel.
Here with you, Francesca. Yeah, I'm just gonna do what my heart takes me to do. I'm gonna follow my heart and follow it to this Matt Gaetz clip because Frank, perfect person to talk about this with. So Matt Gaetz joined protesters in Wyoming to protest Liz Cheney and the fact that she was one of the 10 Republicans in the House, I believe, who voted yes on impeachment. He's now rallying against the number 3 most powerful Republican in the House. I'm sure she'll feel really good about him afterwards, supporting the protesters who want to get rid of her in the next election cycle. Let's watch.
You are great people. You are real America. We are in a battle for the soul of the Republican Party, and I intend to win it. You can help me. You can help me break a corrupt system. You can send a representative who actually represents you, and you can send Liz Cheney home. Back home to Washington, D.C. Thank you all so much. God bless you. God bless our great country. It's going to be a long 2 years, but let's go get them.
So he's basically claiming that she's not actually from Wyoming, which not a terrible claim given her lineage. But obviously Cheney's a big name in that state.
Good hunting lineage, though.
Yeah. Lineage that's like basically demon spawn passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing the Cheney name needs is to be tarnished or sullied after so many years of just strong waterboarding and solid information in the war on terror that is absolutely bared out. Do not check that. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about you guys were talking about earlier. Like, who is shedding a tear to watch while watching the Republican Party like eat itself alive? I will just cover myself in the ashes of the Republican Party like a pagan witch. I am so excited to see them go at it.
And do one better. I'm going to snort those ashes, and I will get a high unlike any this world has ever seen. It's going to be a bath salts type of experience.
I think it should be instructive to people too, that like when Liz Cheney occasionally does these trial balloons, even if she falls through on it, she doesn't have the power. Like we spent so much time, wasted thinking like, what does Liz Cheney or the responsible Republicans think? What can they do is a better question.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing.
Or what she might have done is kind of ended her political career just based on what Wyoming Republicans want. She could be successfully primaried. I would have no doubt about it. And coincidentally, Ocasio-Cortez primaried the number 3 Democrat in the House at the time, and she's the number 3 Republican. And the MAGA heads, they have power in these primary elections.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very torn because I think on the one hand, I really hate dabbling in this like, oh, well, I think they're going to win. I think the MAGA is going to win out, because I personally think that we need to be exploiting the rifts in the Republican Party as much as possible, because as much as I hate the Cheney legacy, I also think that the Matt Gaetz, first of all, he's a total tool. The suit doesn't lie, but I think that the MAGA Marjorie Greene side of this is a lot more dangerous. But then again, that's not our responsibility as progressives or leftists to be the ones driving the wedge. That's the Lincoln Project. All right. That's like, that's all these former Republicans who have, their cushy jobs on MSNBC and CNN. Like, do something, that's your job. But yet we have this moment because, we believe in survival and we're the pro-life party in terms of, wanting to survive climate apocalypse, where we're like, well, okay, well, what do we have to do to try and bring these folks back from the dark side? So I want to be like, it's not our problem. Y'all handle it, but it has to be.
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. This is the opportunity to exploit this and drive a wedge. Or we could just focus on force the vote. But anyway, right, between us instead of driving a wedge between Republicans. So I also want to talk about Fox and Friends. So, Ainsley Earhardt, girlfriend of Sean Hannity, who resembles every 1950s abusive husband. Yes, that's real, Francesca.
Oh, God.
Sorry to break it to the audience as well. Tough.
You really follow closely, Emma. God, that's so awful. Keep going. Yes.
Sean Hannity lives on Long Island, and I know people on Long Island who run into him and Ainsley. So, this is how I know some of this gossip. So, basically, she weighed in this morning on the whole Robin Hood fiasco because they're very confused. AOC is calling out Robin Hood for violating the law and preventing buying some of these stocks that were advertised on Reddit, but not selling in order to drive the price down and save hedge funds from financial ruin. That's their entire goal, and they're pretending it's for protecting the users from themselves. And Ted Cruz is agreeing with AOC. They have no idea what to do with this information. So what are they going to tie it back to? Of course, one of the top Ailes-ish talking points at Fox right now, cancel culture.
Because I believe the one thing that happened that I didn't think was possible, Democrats and Republicans are united in the outrage that this is not fair and there's going to be hell to pay. So that's what I think is key.
Where's the outrage when it comes to censorship, though? The little guy is silenced. The little guy here was trying to be silenced when they wouldn't allow them to buy yesterday. But that's changed, and now there's some lawsuits, and several Congress members, Republicans and Democrats, are now saying we're going to investigate.
Cancel culture is not about the little guy in your definition of it. Cancel culture is quite literally, when you guys are bastardizing it, is about silencing the richest, the most powerful people. It's about silencing, Donald Trump. It's about silencing Steve Bannon. It's all about these people who already are power players in society and are part of ethnic groups that are given every benefit of the doubt, and they just co-opt that victimization and commodify it. So, I cannot stand how they're now saying that the specific targets of cancel culture, I know it's all about their aggrievement, but are powerless. Please.
Was she talking about Rob? I mean, it sounds like she was siding sort of with the small traders in that one instance where she might have been right.
Yeah. But exactly. I mean, I think you're seeing a lot of bipartisan outrage about this. I mean, you're seeing the Portnoy guy from Barstool who's all outraged by this, right? So it sounds like potentially she has the correct position here, but they can't go a breath without. We covered this a few weeks ago when Steve Doocy on that show accidentally said Democratic Party and then was like, I meant Democrat Party because it sounds rat. Because we put this through our focus group. I mean, that's the real thing. And he had to.
Oh my God.
There is never a moment on the show where there's a semblance of honest dialogue because they have to connect it back to the man upstairs or whatever the floor that, Ailes used to be on. What is it? It was infamous. It might have been like the 11th floor or something like that.
Yeah, the grope floor, they call it.
Or the Yeah, the harassment alley is what.
Yeah.
Like
they harassment halls. Yeah, that's right down on the left by harassment hall.
Yeah. And the assault closet. Just never mind.
Sure. Let's keep going with this. I mean, the whole thing is just like a hall of mirrors for if you're a woman. Oh, Ainsley. I mean, you can see this. She's trying to tie it, I think, to like the suppression or the imagined suppression of far right voices like Donald Trump on different platforms. But of course, and this is what's so crazy about it, right? Time and time again, there could be some consensus around here, hey, like platforms shouldn't necessarily decide when they stop or, when they allow people to be banned or not, or like what kind of speech, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, I'm pro kicking Trump and Nazis and bots off of Twitter. But the larger problem is that big tech has way too much power. And in this case, Wall Street has way too much power over a financial system that should, in theory, in their free market theory, invisible hand of the market, should be open to all, right? But of course, now we're seeing that that's actually not how it's played. And in terms of big tech, it's like Republicans can never say that we should break up big tech. They can never talk about antitrust. They go into these congressional meetings and they have no idea. They're talking about cancel culture. Exactly what you're saying, Emma. You got Ainsley talking points, coming out of Jim Jordan's mouth whenever they talk about antitrust. Meanwhile, Democrats are like, anyway.
Whenever they talk about big tech is what you mean. Like, your point about antitrust is so right. Like, there is not, if you're a serious person talking about big tech and not just using it as a cudgel to attack Democrats, which is what Tucker Carlson does, and idiot leftists online fall for it and pretend, he's against the elites.
For sure.
Like, they're using it as the one industry that you can directly tie Democratic corruption to. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Of course, there are many Democrats who take fossil fuel money, who take Wall Street money, 100%. But the dominant force for Democrats versus Republicans is, yes, there's this relationship with big tech. So Tucker goes on his show and he can make it about conservative aggrievement and can make it about victimization. But there's never a policy end to it. That's what you're like. What is he talking? Like, is Tucker in favor? And Ainsley, are you guys in favor of significant antitrust action against big tech in places like Facebook? Let's go down. But they never take it there because they don't want to. It's just a vehicle for their narrative.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Tucker's been talking recently about QAnon and how we need to protect people's right to believe whatever they want, even if it's on the fringes. And you'll notice Tucker has never, ever covered boycott, divest, sanction of Israel and never stand up for them. And if you look at his publication, which is, I guess, no longer a part of as of like last year, Daily Caller, it's entirely McCarthyite when it comes to BDS. So, yeah, he's a freak.
All right, well, let's take a few calls and let's see if this system works from my computer, since Sam had to duck out kind of quickly. All right, I'm calling from a 312 number. Calling from a 312 number.
312.
312 number. Calling from a 312 number. Are you there?
Maybe try another one.
Guys, if it's lit up green, that means they're on, right?
Yeah, you got them on.
Okay. All right. I will hang up on him now. Calling from an 818 number.
Emma, this is Dave from Jamaica.
Dave from Jamaica. You're my first ever call operating the phone system on my own, and I'm so glad that it's you.
Oh, well, yeah, don't make me blush.
Yeah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. How are y'all doing? I guess to kind of go back to the point you and Francesca were talking about with I don't know if I'd call it a civil war in the Republican Party, because I think I already know which side's going to win. Because it seems like the Trump side's going to win. They have already won if we look on the behavior of the leadership, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if we have to worry about putting a wedge between that one. I think that fight is done. But among the Trump people, do y'all see any divisions that could be exploited?
So, Dave, I don't know if I'd agree with you that they fully won. I mean, in the House, I think that's more the case because they're more connected. They're less wealthy in general, and they're more connected to, like, Republican grassroots. In the Senate, they want to be rid of this shit. Like, they want to be done. Like, the McConnells of the world, outside of the really MAGA loyalists, I don't know if I fully agree. I mean, I think there could be a civil war between maybe the House and the Senate Republicans, but
I would say the opportunity is with kind of what AOC is doing with Cruz and Pelosi's doing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is you're not really attacking the extreme fringes when you go after these people. You're really making it harder for the Republican moderates that's who we need to go after now so we can dispel this bullshit about there being bipartisan solutions to our current moment. So I think I'm really heartened that Pelosi's going after Marjorie and AOC is doing this Ted Cruz thing. And we should encourage that sort of division because like, I agree that, the mass of the Republican Party is MAGA, right? But that means you can't work across the aisle with them. So I think I would say that's the opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what I was talking about earlier is just, as much as you might be right that like the MAGA has more of the energy right now. It's got the grassroots energy, I guess, somehow, but that we can't sort of be fatalistic about it because what happens when we are is that we get a bunch of QAnon crazies in the Senate. And I think we've seen folks who've held the, centrist liberal line. You even have the New York Times, of course, being like too many executive orders. I mean, they're so willing to roll over to allow full-blown fascism. So once again, it's not our fight, but somehow we have to, as progressives, be the ones to be like, drawing these lines in the sand. And I'm glad that AOC continually brings up January 6th because never forget. But I do think, it's an interesting question to talk about Q. It's like, well, the prophecy didn't come true. It's probably a psyop. Can we move on from Q? Like if you're talking about wedges in the, the fringe or in MAGA, that might be one.
Well, I guess to go back to the part where you said you're not sure about the Senate. Well, after seeing how Mitch McConnell behaved before he was signaling, I'm going to impeach Trump, and now he's like, well, this thing's not really constituted. That tells me already they already know who's going to win, even on the Senate side. So, but as for, I know it's difficult trying to find out wedge issues with crazy people, but I do think they're going to be, as you said, the dominant thing will be the Trump side of things. So I'm hoping maybe that will kind of force the Dems to filibuster, not because they want to, but they literally have no other option because the Republicans only have one mode of operation.
Yeah, and I sorry, Francesca, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that somehow getting to the root of the fact that these movements we're seeing now have all stemmed from the astroturfing of the Tea Party movement under, in 2008 and 2009. And when we can overturn Citizens United, whether it is stacking the courts, whether it is a move to amend the Constitution, as hard as that might be, but getting dark money out of our politics is a way to nullify all these movements. I realize that feels very pie in the sky. The other thing I was going to say is it's an interesting moment because you see like centrist Republicans and Democrats, progressives, and then like MAGA Republicans all being like, who's going to break for a third party first? And, they're all kind of like, who are you gonna do it? Because we know that third party politics in this two party duopoly, is a losing game, sadly, on a federal level, as much as I don't want that to be true. But I also think that we can always try and keep goading Trump to launch the Patriot Party. Hey man, go your own way. Do it.
Now he's saying and meeting with McCarthy. We talked about this earlier in the show that he's going to help with these with the midterms in 2022. And I have my doubts that he actually will fucking help. Like, I think he's so lazy And now that he doesn't have his social media validation, like, I don't know what's in it for him.
I put the calculation slightly different because remember, Trump used to be the most powerful man in the world. There ain't going to be nothing left in his life that's going to match that. So he's not leaving politics. No amount of money is going to leave that. He seems vindictive enough to make sure to punish all the traitors. So yeah, probably that.
I want to bring in a little bit of impromptu Dave Rubin report into this conversation.
Please.
A week or so ago, he had a roundtable with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Sean Spicer, and a guy named Jack Murphy. And there were, what was that, Emma?
I just said a meeting of the minds.
Exactly, yeah. And so I just want to share this because Rubin, this is kind of like the conversation that, the left has with regards to can we go third party? Well, here's what Gorka's position is.
The future of this thing would be interesting. Gorka, what do you think the
future of MAGA he's talking about?
What is the beard?
The Republicans is? Is it a Trump future, or are they going back to all the other guys?
Well, I tell you one thing, it better not be a third party, Dave. So that would be a disaster. That's how we got Bill Clinton when Ross Perot ran against Clinton and split the conservative vote. Look, I listened to my sources. I had one of the new freshman congresswomen on my show, Lauren Bobbitt, who's already created quite a name for herself, who said...
By doing mass diarrhea to 80 plus people, including reports of bloody stool at Shooter's Grill. Look at those records, but anyway, I digress.
Look at the toys.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Just the Gorka toys I didn't ever want to see.
There's a minion, of course. There's Bert and Ernie. There's Bin Laden.
Bert and Ernie. The stalwarts of Western civilization, Bert and Ernie.
What show is this from? It's like the Dalek, I know, but I forget the show it's called.
Doctor Who, isn't it?
Doctor Who. Dr. Gorka watching Doctor Who. Anyway.
I show America First. This is Donald Trump's party now. I don't know what he's going to do in 2024. I was there at Andrews Air Force Base with Sean.
So yeah, anyway, I feel like that's interesting. Like, I think they all think MAGA has it locked up. So absolutely don't start a third party. I think the Patriot Party should be encouraged. I think it's funny, but I think,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what Emma was saying was that, like, can he actually campaign on other people's behalf? I mean, look at Georgia, right? It took every bone in his body to campaign for two people whose names I now forget. No, Perdue and Loeffler, and they lost. And so he's just like anything to make it not about himself he can't do. Ergo, Patriot Party, bro.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still, one of the most underrated moments from Trump was right at the end, campaigning for Martha McSally, where he goes, "Quick, Martha, quick, come on, stay. I want to hear from you, quick,
come on."
Also, I have to correct
myself.
I have to correct myself really quick, or the Doctor Who fans will get upset. It wasn't the Dalek, that was the TARDIS. So I apologize to Doctor Who fans in the chat that are blowing it up right now.
Apology accepted.
Who gives a shit? Anyway, I'm joking.
I think I've been on the line long enough, but I do find
hey, Dave.
Boys very interesting. Even his 80s collection of RoboCop memorabilia.
Nice.
Impression, and I'm sorry, Doctor Who fans, because I'm sure none of you give a shit about my sports takes, but still, I like shower you with them. Anyway.
We all love sports, Emma. They're just.
It's pretty good.
I don't, Emma, but I respect your right to hold those sports takes.
Thank you.
I just see you every Sunday, and I'm like,
Dave.
I'm like, why? I don't get it. What's Emma saying?
Yeah, I mean, people complain about my. I can't hang up on Dave. I'm trying.
I can handle that.
Don't ever hang up on Dave.
And okay, so yeah, no, I know. I feel like people don't like it, but it's my Twitter account, so I'm gonna do.
I don't. You do you. That's what I think is great. Look, I don't have to pretend to like sports anymore because I'm not sleeping with anyone who likes sports. Right. So this is a win for me in my new chapter of my life. But if you like from an organic place like football, hell yeah, support.
It's not. See, the thing about it is that there are a lot of women who performatively like.
Oh yeah.
For, like attention and like shots of their boobs on the internet to go more viral. They make me so angry because then it makes like people think I'm a poser or something like that. But it's actually just a mental illness on my behalf.
Just to put a fine point on the idea of Trump actually helping people in 2022, here's the statement his PAC put out after meeting with McCarthy at Mar-a-Lago. If one of you want to read this.
Between President Donald J. Trump and House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, was a very good and cordial one. They discussed many topics, number one of which was taking back the House in 2022. So this is, again, an attempt to squash any, like, rumblings about the Patriot Party. President Trump's popularity has never been stronger than it is today. That is a fucking lie. And his endorsement means more than perhaps any endorsement at any time. He wrote this, Trump? President Trump has agreed to work with Leader McCarthy on helping the Republican Party to become a majority in the House. They worked very well together in the last election and picked up at least 15 seats. When most predicted it would be the opposite, which that is true. They will do so again, and the work has already started, which is troubling because the Democrats' majority is even slimmer than it was. And
How much money do you think he's letting go of that he raised since losing the election? Like, how much of that? How much of his PAC? Exactly. None.
Dick.
This is the same line. This is the same thing. Everything's good. Trump still loves Republicans, even though if he were on Twitter right now, he would just be shitting on them one by one by one by one by one.
100%, and I doubt he would even direct his ire to the Democrats because, you know, he's going to be as divisive as possible, and he feels like they all should be uniting behind them when, like, the idea that he's popular in any way right now, I mean, after the insurrection, his popularity dropped 10 points. Like, I don't think it ever hit the, 22% low? That was, like, the lowest of the Bush era. But He was in the 20s. He was in the 20s. And then McCarthy is, like, putting out press releases saying that he's as popular as ever. Ridiculous.
It's still very much I've always, like, the analogy I have in my mind is just sort of the final action scene when, like, you know, the two villain and hero, but like Mitch McConnell is definitely not a hero, but like just sort of grappling for who's gonna stay on the ledge and who's gonna fall to their death, and like they're all kind of getting one over on one another. Like when the January 6th happened, I was like, my God, I actually see the 7D chess. You know, you've got his supporters calling to hang Mike Pence. You've got his supporters hounding Lindsey Graham, these like sycophants, the most loyalists of Trump loyalists, chanting them down. Like, this is amazing. But now it's like, yeah, who's going to let go of whom? And I would argue, yeah, the Republican Party's ridden him all they need. They actually don't need them. And they're so deluded into thinking he would still like rally or campaign or work to help them and their candidates without him. I don't think so, which is all setting up for this, you know, the impeachment, and which I'm like, procedurally, big problem with the fact that, like, you can vote. Can we just vote not to convict, but also that he can't hold office in the future? Can we just reverse that, you know?
There are people saying you can do that with the 14th Amendment, but I haven't seen anyone serious. Like, I've seen that chatter on the tweeters, but like, I've never seen like a serious article about it, so I can't speak to the efficacy of that kind of strategy. But, let's take one more call, and then I have a very special, spicy Rudy Giuliani clip for us to get to.
Ooh.
Calling from a 414 number. Calling from a 414
Hello?
Number.
Hello?
Hey, is Josh, is that you?
It is not.
Oh, it is not. I'm sorry. Who is this, and where are you calling from?
This is Joe calling from Milwaukee.
Oh, Joe from Milwaukee. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I just wanted to... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, what's on your mind today?
I just wanted to call and talk about the potential with the whole mega party, Patriot Party. I was wondering if you thought there was... If you thought there was any efficacy to trying to push because the Q people, I feel like, are the easiest to break off in the Republican Party. Because, I mean, there's no rational thought behind them. They're basically just conspiracy theorists. It's honestly at this point where it's a pure cult. To where if you could just, I don't know, push for a Q party, kind of paint the Republicans as, use their both siderisms as a weapon against the Republicans to peel off Q into another party.
Yeah.
I don't know your thoughts on that.
No, I think that really dovetails nicely with what we were talking about with Dave from Jamaica and just how there is a wedge there when it's like Republicans have done brilliant work at making so much of their political project emotional and cultural. And there's nothing more emotional than these Q fanatics where there's like this religious nature tied into it, about possessing this secret knowledge where they're all connecting the dots and of course go to pedophilia, which is the worst thing you could ever accuse anybody of. And so then there's also this evangelical stuff tied into it too about abortion. Like they are the most emotional voting bloc that's ever existed. So if you can kind of push them towards a Patriot or a Q party, like they are a vulnerable group. I mean, the fact that like there are going to be people, moderate Republicans, the few that exist, that are going to speak out against Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, that could be a potential to drive a wedge.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was saying. I totally agree with you that they're the Q are the easiest to be like, let's throw some bread over here. Let's do a decoy thing over there and, lead them down this path because they've clearly gone this far. So, all you got to do is, get a good slogan, another slogan. I guess they have a slogan. They pretty much have everything they need, but they need to go their own way. They need to actually decide that someone's got to hip them to the idea that the two-party system's messed up. And what you really got to do, we all know, is try and make it.
If Democrats were interested in winning, that would be a kind of project that they would undergo themselves, right? That's
the Republicans did this in Minnesota against Ilhan and a number of other people with pro-weed parties, for instance. I mean, it's a playbook. I mean, I am principally opposed to, false democracy. I think that's dangerous. That doesn't mean I can't occasionally enjoy somebody if they would do it, but I personally wouldn't encourage people to go do false flag third-party reactionary groups. I think I'd rather see the Democrats try to actually organize for themselves in rural areas than for a false party. But if you're online and you see somebody say, why would you vote for the Republican Party when they're selling you out? Vote your heart, vote QAnon.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Lynn Wood, strategy. I think it's probably not going to be Q. Again, it'll have to be Trump. I mean, they think that Trump is Q. I don't even want to be talking about this, but sadly we have to. But yeah, it has to have Trump there at the helm. But you're absolutely right. None of this is going to be a serious Republican strategy or a progressive strategy. I mean, we're trying to hold it together ourselves. I think our task in the next 4 to 8 to whenever is basically to keep it together and keep our eye on the prize and not get waylaid by a lot of strategies like our own third party that's not going to work on a national level.
Joe from Milwaukee. Jesus, I can't speak today. Thank you so much for your call.
It's okay. And go Rogers, and Doctor Who's amazing, Emma. Come on.
All right. Well, I was just being a little asshole there. So thanks so much. Bye. Sometimes I like to keep fans in check because I spend too much time with John Idarola.
I know. I've had to step in your absence. No, I haven't really, but
is he still excusing? I haven't talked to him about this lately because it's a sensitive subject. Still excusing Game of Thrones season 8. Still thinks.
I think he is. I think I've never actually had that conversation with him because I still want to like him. But I know you guys have had your disagreements. I'm definitely squarely on your side. So I just, those friendships, it's like politics. You don't talk about with certain people. You don't talk about Game of Thrones season 8 with contrarians.
With terrible taste. I'd probably
also with people with terrible taste.
Right? Yeah. I mean, he is just he excuses everything. He excuses it all. He excused to me the last Star Wars movie. I don't want to talk about it. All right.
Well, then I'm on his side. Okay, let's keep going, Emma. This is a different conversation. I'm excited to have it one day.
Yeah, different conversation. So, Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, yes.
Not sweating liquid down his face this time, but he has set his sights on a new foe, the Lincoln Project. I find the Lincoln Project to be quite despicable. And by the way, the numbers bear out that their project was completely ineffective because Trump is as popular as ever with Republicans. And so the mythical anti-Trump Republican was not a part truly of the Biden coalition. But I digress. Let's hear Rudy's take on why he's feuding with the Lincoln Project.
The defense is going to have to show that this thing was planned and that a lot of the people involved in the planning, Antifa, and then even some right-wing groups were enemies of his, and that they were...
I just wanted to set up, this is his take on the insurrection and how he's blaming it on the Lincoln Project.
Doing it in order to hurt him, including some right-wing groups that operate for the Lincoln Project, or have been working with the Lincoln Project at various times. You have a couple of wolves and sheep.
Hold it. Hang on. Whoa. What do you say working for the Lincoln Project? Right-wing groups like who?
One of the people who organized this is well known for having worked with the Lincoln Project in the past, and also.
Okay, but who is it? But Rudy, we can't.
That he helped to bring. You gotta let me finish this.
Rude.
Yo, man.
So
go ahead.
One of the people involved brought in right-wing groups that opposed Trump. And he brought them in specifically because he wanted to blow this thing up. He had the same motivation. The Antifa people had. So it isn't as if all these right-wing groups were all pro-Trump. And the biggest problems, violent problems, were caused by Antifa. That's where the shooting took place. That was surrounded by all Antifa people. How can he be held responsible for a whole thing that's planned days before he's going to speak?
Look at that Super Bowl
that has a
pinky
mixture
ring.
of people that hate him and people that support him. He's not.
So who's the guy?
How can he possibly be
Who's the guy?
responsible
Who's the guy working with the Lincoln Project?
He's a. I don't know if I can reveal his name because we have that from anonymous sources. But he worked in the past. He worked in the past for Romney.
Okay, hang on for a second. Okay, but I mean, hey, this is why we're getting blown up all the time. You can't throw a charge out there like that and then say, yeah, I got a double secret probation guy who I can't mention, but he worked for Romney, worked for the Lincoln Project. Anyway, we'll drill down this more.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, Rudy.
Okay, that is glorious. So, lest you believe that Steve Bannon is doing journalism there. Steve Bannon is terrified of getting deplatformed and or sued.
Yeah.
That's what that is. But secondly, we should believe Rudy, right? He's never made false claims before and then, had to face the music in court and then actually said there was no election fraud. Oh, wait, that is Rudy Giuliani. I mean, the fact that he thought he was in a friendly space with Steve Bannon and Steve's stomach dropping into his butt thinking I am going to get kicked off of my platforms again. I am going to get sued.
Is this serious? Is he still on Sirius?
I don't know. But One American News Network was sued because they kept saying Dominion. They're changing the votes. And Newsmax was threatened with litigation, I believe. And the MyPillow guy too. Bannon's I don't want that happening to me. So that wasn't due diligence journalism-wise. It was covering his own ass.
For sure.
But still, because Giuliani thought he was in a friendly place, he wasn't expecting that. And then he actually answered. Anonymous sources, probably bots on Twitter, telling Rudy Giuliani, or bots on Parler or whatever, that doesn't exist anymore, telling Giuliani that the Lincoln Project was involved in the Capitol insurrection undercover.
I mean, I did think I saw Scaramucci just charging full throttle into the Capitol. He was like, "Don't touch me." That's not what he does, but hey, he's wearing a very nice suit, and it was like a scrum, and he got right through the middle. Lincoln Project, Lincoln Project, and Antifa. Strange bedfellows, okay? The hashtag resistance is broad, and sometimes you got to do entire false flag operation. in
Yeah,
Giuliani's brain.
I want to talk about that false flag thing because I laughed. There was a funny tweet that said like the leading line from the right now is that a bunch of Antifa herded patriots into the Capitol against their better judgment. And that is basically what they're saying.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but like then I heard from somebody back in North Dakota that like their significant other came home and they were talking like, oh, did you hear what's been going on at the Capitol? And everything that was going on at his workplace was it's Antifa that's doing most of the bad damage. So I think we need to not underestimate this right-wing propaganda machine and how fast it gets its tentacles with even the dumbest bullshit lies. Into
I mean,
people's brains.
that's interesting because it's like it, you know, a lot of folks were out there that day, news organizations. Jordan Klepper was out there for, you know, making fun of everybody. But I think the one question you're just like, are you Antifa? Are you Antifa? And you could just, you know, next time we'll all ask because there will be a next time, sadly, if everyone there is Antifa. And just it's, I mean, the other day, I mean, recently there was a footage released of a woman who had one of the people who died who was trampled to death. Right. And the reason she was trampled to death is that the crowd was so fixated on hitting a police officer, on like bludgeoning this cop that they ran over her body and then she just died.
Yeah, they weren't herded in like benign cattle with a little, you know, sheepdog nipping at their heels, and that sheepdog would be Antifa. I mean, but you putting that into context, like, you know, jokes aside, it's extremely disturbing, and we're only weeks removed, and that's all it took for Republicans to say, "No, we're not going to hold him accountable." And like, what's the pathetic lack of accountability displayed by Republicans like Rudy Giuliani is that they can't even reckon with what they've created, so they have to pretend it's the foes that were trying to oppose them, like the Lincoln Project and like Antifa. Like,
right, these are all never Trumpers who stormed the Capitol. That's all they are after I and everyone else encouraged them to storm the Capitol. I mean, you know, like Trump saying, like, we're not going to accept this hours before it happened. I just wonder what Rudy Giuliani, like, what's his future? I'm surprised he still thinks he's going to be relevant. Like, you're not getting paid. You didn't get the pardon. We're all out of whiskey. You got a few saltines left in the pantry. Like, you got the one good suit.
He's like that. He's the guy, like, the party's over, the house party's over, and he's still just like chugging vodka shots at the end. You're like, dude, you're way too drunk and left already.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's also like, does he not go away? Is he Trump's last friend?
I mean, he's basically just surviving on like self-generated bile that just churns his body every day. So I don't really know what kind of like fuel life that rotund mechanism had.
I mean, he could get on all these shows though, and that's the crazy thing is like even Bannon having him on. You know, Bannon, you've really strayed from your white ethno state, you know, goals, and all the Nazis are sad.
Yeah. I completely agree. Let's take a call or two. Calling from a 312 number. Calling from a 312 number. Hello? Calling from a 312 number. Nope.
Is that same 312, dude?
Calling from a 208 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Calling from a 208 area code. Dang it. I'm working on it.
That's okay.
Hello?
I can't imagine.
Hello.
Hello. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
This is Sean from Washington.
Sean from Washington. How are you, Sean?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Congratulations on your first day taking the reins here.
Thanks.
You're doing great. You're doing great, honey.
Thanks so much. I found out like minutes ago or whenever this started. So look, it's all good. It's casual Friday, right?
Yeah, so I got my no collared shirt on here. I just wanted to say a quick thing, cool thing that happened in Seattle. cooling systems went out in the hospital. And I found this out while I was waiting. You guys check it out. A cooling system went out in the hospital, so they put out a public call and vaccinated a couple of hundred people out so they wouldn't go bad. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, cool. I mean, so
but really,
that I'm glad they took advantage of it and didn't just like let it fall apart or whatever.
Yeah.
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 I just saw that on the way. I just actually wanted to call and tell you that Golden Tate caught the ball. And I was wondering, from a labor perspective, is how your love for Aaron Rodgers squares with how he was able to manipulate the media narrative that was used to break a referee strike by framing Terrific Tate's golden grab as the Fail Mary. And I wonder how you feel about just the manufacturing consent in general, and how corporate media with ESPN and other outlets were able to collaborate and break.
Wow.
You're a Fail Mary truther? Is this what I'm hearing?
Well, it's Terrific Tate's golden grab.
Right.
You'll notice when they get to the bottom of the pile, the whatever no-name Packers player trying to pull the ball off. It's often saying like, well, look, he had the ball, but as far as I know, you don't struggle to get the ball away from somebody when you have clear possession of it.
So you're from Seattle, and you're probably the most biased potential caller about this scenario.
I'm from Idaho, and
yes.
I lived in Europe for some time too as a child.
I'm so sorry. Well,
international here.
National consensus has cleared this up. You are essentially the QAnon of NFL fans at this point. Everybody knows that Golden Tate did not catch the ball, and Aaron Rodgers' progressive politics are well documented.
Fighting for it? If I tossed you a ball,
yeah,
the person next to you caught the ball, would they have to wrestle it away from you, or would they just have the ball? Because how often do you wrestle something away from somebody who didn't catch it?
All the time, dude. Little kids who like try and catch fly balls, hell no.
That is called an interception, my friend.
Yeah, all right. But usually interception, you don't have to take it from somebody else when simultaneous goes to the offense. Okay, I'm gonna let it go. But I want to ask a quick question real quick.
Okay,
Matt.
Okay, cool.
Matt, so like I said, I grew up in Idaho. I grew up in Europe for a while when I was a kid, and I sort of kind of have to pick teams in that regard. And I know you're from North Dakota. So I'm a Cubs fan because of my grandpa, and I'm a Sonics fan because just like the Seahawks, I like Northwest sports, and I moved out here. So how come you rock a Cubs hat and a Sonics hat?
Well, I practice enlightened fandom. So I follow teams by players that I like, or organizations that I like. But you're right, big North Dakota. Growing up, I could choose between the Broncos, the Packers, and the Vikings mainly. I chose the Vikings, probably the worst choice from a mental health standpoint. And
they're always good enough to just be around, but never to like take home the prize.
Yeah, and was a Bulls fan growing up, but then went with the Lakers. So like I mean, I wear a Sonics hat because I want there to be a Seattle basketball team, I guess is the shortest answer to that hat specifically.
Kraken fan caller.
Oh, and I buy a hat to every sporting event I go to. So the Cubs hat, for instance, I went to a game in Wrigley and bought a hat.
I have a question.
Yes.
When are they going to stop beating the shit out of their girlfriends?
Yeah, that was speaking of the Seahawks and former ex-Giant, that was pretty bad. Chad,
horrible.
He almost murdered her. So I don't know why it's felony domestic.
He thought he did.
He said, "Oh, I thought you were dead" when he walked by her, according to her.
Went to dinner.
I don't want to talk about that much. So thank you so much, caller. And, I mean, honestly, yes, I'm a well-known Aaron Rodgers fan, but that was a hilarious question the way it was framed, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm hanging up on you. All right, 301 area code. 301 area code.
Hey, what's up, MR Crew? I got more sports takes for you.
Wait. What's your name? Where you're calling from?
Andrew from DC. But I promise it's a short one, and then I have a real question.
Okay, I'm gonna just make this face.
Everyone.
Okay, so
yeah.
This is for Emma. assuming Aaron Rodgers wins the MVP this year, which he most likely will, there will be 2 quarterbacks in history that have won 3 MVPs and only 1 Super Bowl. One will be Aaron Rodgers. The other will be Brett Favre.
Right.
Because the Packers suck at supporting their great quarterback.
Exactly.
And they're completely right in this take. However, okay, I have a real question though. So,
100%.
I am one of the, I guess, fortunate former libertarians who has been turned on to Majority Report.
Wow.
Bienvenidos.
And in that take, yes, it's good. But completely come around to you guys. You've been awesome. You and Chapo have converted me for sure. However, I still have a lot of friends that I guess would be in that alt-right sort of pipeline, So I kind of look at it as my job to at least provide a real sounding board of ideas and challenge their idiotic straw men that they get from Tucker or Ben Shapiro or whatever. So I try and involve myself somewhat respectively, sometimes respectfully, sometimes not at all, in like whenever they bring up shit that is stupid and needs to be challenged. But my question is, and I'm actually, as living in D.C. and being from here originally, the whole like Capitol thing, like watching them both sides it or downplay it or whatever, was unbelievably disheartening to me. Like, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Am I wasting my time even talking to these people? And I think my question is, when do you draw the line and just say, forget it? Like, it's just not worth my time anymore. And I think right, I wanted to call and talk about this when you were talking yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Boogaloo Boy, and how it's good to approach people on an individual level and not on as a representative of the whole thing. But at what point do you just cut bait and are just like, I can't anymore. Like, I can't deal with these people and how they approach things. It just feels like I'm banging my head into a wall. But I'm scared to do that because maybe then they go full, if they don't have anybody to challenge them or make them think, then they go full down the other way. And I'm like, oh, that's an even worse outcome for society at large. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's really difficult. So your question is really just when is the time to give up on libertarians and people who aren't necessarily seeing your side and are constantly both sidesing things?
Yeah, I mean, there are reachable ones, right? There are times when people go, oh, yeah, shoot, I never thought about that. Like, that makes a lot of sense, And, I had an text argument the other day where this guy was saying that, AOC is the Trump of the left. And I was like, you're insane. That's the stupidest thing. And then by the end, he was like, all right, yeah, you're right. I overstated it. Because he only hears, the crappy spin of, whatever, like I said, Tucker or Sean Hannity or whatever, take her out of context and whatever. And I was like, here's a couple clips of her just talking. She's actually incredibly smart.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that's amazing. I think it's on you. In my opinion, is how much can you stomach and handle? And, if you feel like you're a good gateway and you can speak a certain language or they trust you, I think that's great. It's just a matter of how much emotional energy you're willing to put up and how much you can put up with. I also think that, getting saving clips in your back pocket, being able to send them to folks when they need to hear it, a gentle little email, siren passing, that I think is really worth it. To just send them along and a gentle nudge. I did that actually with the Seahawks coach when he, whatever his name is, when he spoke out for Black Lives Matter. And I sent that to some relatives who I knew were being baited into a Republican talking point of how BLM is coming for you and your children, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, look, nice older white man, football man says there is a lot of justification for this. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
with Greg Popovich too. That was the other thing. But I do this. Sorry, Matt.
Well, I was just going to say, I would look at it as you can contribute to these people seeing the truth, and that's what you should be there for. But you don't expect you to by the power of your persuasiveness actually convert people, because they're embedded in social networks that they're getting all sorts of different messages. So all you can do is be the beacon of truth in that person's life, and when they're there to receive it, they'll take it. And with that, I was out of line on AOC as the Trump thing, they will appreciate that. And over time, the hope is maybe you'll start to they'll start to recognize some of the patterns there with regards to what's truthful. So, but I think you can only contribute and just do what you can to contribute, but don't like try to save people because it's extremely difficult. I don't like that. We get a lot of these calls, right? Since I've been doing this job, and very rarely is it like, oh yeah, I sent them a few articles and they're like, holy shit, my entire worldview was really messed up. And then they subscribe to Jacobin, right? You just
they're never going to tell you when you've won, though. That's the other thing. Is like they're never going to be like, "Oh, you got me in this moment," you know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is the vehicle because honestly, when you have personal relationships with people, the communication is completely seen through the lens of like any past history you guys have, any like. Anything that comes up in your relationship emotionally. And so a lot of times it is like what Francesca said with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, right? Like a lot of times that is like the messenger. And so I do think clips in the back pocket is good. And it may not be right away and it may not be as immediate as you want because you're seeing the logic. But so much of politics is emotional. I say this all the time. And so a lot of people are just wedded to what they think because it's a cozy blanket for them, and libertarianism allows them to see the worldview in a very black and white way that isn't quite very nuanced. So that's a lot of it too. But thanks so much for the call.
One last thing before you boot me, I have one last question.
Sure.
Real quick. How does it feel to know that Washington is basically going to dominate the NFC for the next 10 years?
Okay, well, all right. I'm sorry, guys. The sports questions, I love them so much, but I feel like people get mad. But I will say, ridiculous. The last time there's been a back-to-back NFC East winner was what, like 2011? So that's
2021. That's when it's going to happen.
Sure, buddy.
Call your bookie today.
Yeah, sure.
Emma, you really should do a sports show. You know,
we've been talking about
Emma,
this.
I will call in every day and listen every day if you do a sports show.
We might just have to.
On Twitter.
We might just have to. I mean, I want to do a political show too. So we'll see. We'll see. Although I am on one.
Have a great weekend, guys.
I can do. I'll just have no free time. But I appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right. I think, guys, that might be our final call. I'm sorry for everybody that hung on for so long, but Jesus, did I hang up? I have no idea. I'm sorry for everybody that hung on so long, but we just wanted to end on this final hilarious note because I think this clip is pretty hilarious. So Steve Mnuchin's wife, she's an artist. Mm-hmm. She may look like the Real Housewife of Mars. She may have zero personality, but really,
money is a personality, Emma. Okay.
About that, yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
You're able to buy artistic talent when you're related to sleeping with the foreclosure king, who allows you to be shameless. Let's see a little bit of her work.
My name is Catherine Black. You may think that I'm a materialistic, narcissistic, self-absorbed misanthrope. I don't deny it.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm a hedge fund manager. I'm addicted to fashion, the accumulation of money, exercise, and sex. My life is incredible.
Oh, God.
I have an appointment about renting the room. Nice digs. You got a plastic Mustang?
That doesn't look like Steve.
Every single day. Now I gotta cut loose. I had a soft spot for him. Who
What's
knew?
this fake
I hadn't
accent?
felt a soft spot for anything since I was 6.
Oh.
It's very sexy.
Don't get carried away.
Oh my
Keep your
God.
focus on the task at hand.
I don't believe that she's British.
How did
I don't
not see
care.
it coming?
It's all a
Thieving little
ruse.
twit. Oh, I have to pull myself together. I think I'm going to disembowel this kid and kill him.
Gonna take a vow of poverty?
You got the car?
I'm taking the car back. I think I really like this girl.
I really think we can make this work. You stole from me.
You're crazy. Is that a curling iron? You can do what
I like how it's over a
that.
property issue.
Okay, maybe I was wrong about the curling iron. That really escalated. I'm madly in love with you.
I really appreciate that.
There's no need to escalate this to the point of no return.
That's subjective, sweetheart.
She should have just released a song. Oh, God.
It's like there's two people in this movie.
Yes.
Should we take a water break?
That'd be nice. Maybe we should get married.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
He wrote, directed, and produced this satirical film. Seems like, as Matt said, they didn't really blow much of the budget on casting. Or they just like went really hard at Ed Westwick, who people of my generation will remember was Chuck from Gossip Girl. I was in love with him when I was 13. I was in love with him.
And so was she.
And so is Catherine Black, a brilliant, ruthless business executive who runs a top hedge fund in LA. She lives a wealthy but ice-cold life and is a self-declared murderous psychopath. So, like, kind of a lazier American Psycho, except with two people in it.
And
yeah,
like,
like
pretty much
I've
just
learned-
pure projection.
Yeah, exactly. All this actually happened, and I feel like I know way too much about Steve Mnuchin's kink just by seeing that. Like, there's a lot of ropes, there's a lot of harnesses. He's obviously got a ball gag. Like, it's just too much information, and all of that was paid for by our money. We do understand this, right?
Yeah, this is like Rebecca Black, but the movie, right? Wasn't she the one who had that like
Friday.
And the team made the it was like a factory for pop hits. Like, this is just what you can do if you're connected to a Hollywood producer. I mean, it's funny that the Republicans are the anti-Hollywood people. This is a pure like Hollywood vanity project for this. I mean, I will be a viewer of it. I guarantee you that.
Yes, we will all watch this.
And what does this say about her view of her husband? I mean, she is playing a psychopathic murder hedge fund manager.
I mean, he paid for it too, so he's
bad.
How does she know what a psychopathic hedge fund manager is like? Like, how could she ever understand that experience?
Do you think in the sex scenes of this movie, Mnuchin is in the corner just like, yeah.
He directed him, yeah.
He absolutely did. He's there. You can sort of see him in the director's cut is just him being like, and here's where my wife slept with this hot young'un again, and I watched. Sorry, that's awful. She's also like, how old is she?
I don't know. The point also,
47, you know?
So she casts this, recognizable teen heartthrob guy from like 10 to 12 years ago, and there's no one else in it. Like, is this just kind of a way for her to get sexual gratification outside of her marriage?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
First of all, she was on the cover. I live in LA, and she was like at the Vons. She was on the cover of like Los Angeles magazine. And I wanted to burn the whole Vons to the ground immediately. She has been, look, and this is the Republicans, like hook, line, and sinker. They are failed. They hate like liberal Hollywood because they're failed Hollywood producers and actors and movie stars. They like ultimately want to be friends with Tom Hanks, but if they can't be friends with him, then he's a pedophile. Like, they are, that's all they want. They want to be loved so bad. Exactly.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine that she's truly attracted to him, and she clearly needs some, something a little on the side.
She's been method acting as a psychopath for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah. And remember her Instagram posts of her in her private jet and just going after random people commenting on it?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was classic. Then they, God damn it. She's probably the worst person. At the same time, I think we need to do a Zoom screening of this and get very high and talk all of, CBD oil or whatever we're okay with.
Marijuana in this program.
It's the least we could do. We paid for this, so we should get to see it.
Well, that's why she's offering it for free, right?
Yeah, what streaming platform is it on?
All right, guys. I I dipped my toe into hosting the show on my own. I'm hanging up the calls. Goodbye.
Crushed it.
Sorry. But it's Friday. We're going to end a little early today and send Sam some good energy and vibes. I know he's all about, energy and holistic
I heard some
goals.
reports of what he's actually doing.
I have a crystal here. Just gonna
some
lob
people,
it.
Some people say he's watching a certain YouTuber that he likes to be annoyed by instead of resting. So actually get some rest, Sam.
Some people are saying that. Many people are saying that. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Hope you have a great weekend. Francesca, thanks for joining me today to make fun of everybody. And
Thank you, Emma.
I love that you guys like that I love sports. Just cut down on the sports calls so we don't lose half our audience. But thank you very much. All right, guys.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and